Welcome to Premium Cashflow Real Estate Investing Podcast with SK093. During this program, you will hear guest experts sharing their experiences, best practices, and market insights. We discuss investing in multifamily apartment complexes and how a busy professional can passively invest hassle-free in various opportunities. Your host, SK093, owns millions of dollars of assets and has done thousands of value-add projects over 20 years now. So listen in for insights. Here's your host, SK093.
Welcome to another edition of Premium Cashflow Podcast. Boy, are we in immense luck today. So I have the dynamic Rich Fetteke with Real Wealth Network today. Welcome to the show, Rich. I appreciate you taking time today.
Thanks for being here. It was great. Love it.
Absolutely. So for our listeners, Rich is the co-CEO of Real Wealth Network, a 3-time 5,000 ranked real estate investor network. They have well over 50,000 members. That's well over 50,000 members, and their group is run by their own 27 employees as well. Rich leads their company, is passionate about teams, systems, and processes within their own network. He himself is a real estate broker and an investor for a very long time. And the amazing part is Rich brings, he is himself a certified master business coach as well. So he brings in a lot more rich experience from that side of the house as well. Incredible journey with sports. He is a record holder, bungee jumper, a skydiver, rock climber, skier, surfer. Boy, the list goes on and on. They currently live in beautiful Malibu with their daughters. So welcome to the show, Rich. It is an immense pleasure to have you, and you're certainly a great personality to listen to. I appreciate your time today.
Thank you.
Awesome. So give us some background, Rich, as to kind of how you got started. And, obviously Real Wealth Network is such a big force in the industry today. So kind of, how that all came about,
Well, I mean, Real Wealth Network was really formed out of desperation. It was, I had just come off a book tour. I was, like you said, I was a master certified business coach and worked with clients for years. And then I started to get hired to give keynote speeches. And that led to a book deal with Simon & Schuster for my book called Extreme Success. Mm-hmm. And so I was on top of my game, feeling great, like life was on fire. And we had a 7-year-old daughter, a 3-year-old daughter, everything was great. And then one day I noticed this freckle on my leg, and obviously I have freckles being a ginger, but it was like, it looked a little different than the other freckles. So I went and got it checked. It was actually Kathy. She said, "You're going to get to the doctor to get that checked." Mm-hmm. And she held me accountable. Anyway, it came back as melanoma, which is the most deadly form of skin cancer, which is usually no problem. I had surgeries, got it removed, but then the doctor asked me to get a CT scan to make sure it hadn't spread. And that CT scan showed 4 masses on my liver. And so over the period of about 2 months, I went through different tests to find out what was going on, and met with an oncologist, and he said, "You have probably about 6 months to live. It looks like it's moved to your liver, and there's not much we can do about it." It was really scary. So Kathy was a stay-at-home mom at the time. She had like a small radio show on a local station that she was interviewing people about personal and professional development. And so she said, "I'm going to find out how to create wealth, how I can make money if I'm not going to be around. If Rich isn't going to be around, she's going to find a way to make money." And so she started to interview successful people and found that most of them made their money through real estate. Mm-hmm. And so she came home all fired up, and she's like, "This is what we need to do. I think this is what I can do." And so she got fired up around that. She started to interview more guests around it. And then I got luckily the diagnosis that it was a false positive. The masses in my liver were just hemangiomas that like 20% of all of us have somewhere in our body, just a cluster of blood vessels. But on all these scans, it looked like it was the cancer. So anyway, they said, "Rich, after a PET scan, they said it shows that you're 100% cancer free." But that was the kick in the ass to get
Sure,
us into
sure.
action and Kathy into action. So we went out, we bought 6 investment properties north of Dallas, single family homes, and started to do that. And then our friends started to say, can you show us what you're doing? Tell us more how that worked. And so we started to help them. And then one day, Kathy and I, after, a year or two, we were meeting in this one cafe one day, and we just started to talk about it. And Kathy's like, it'd be cool to help people, form a little network of investors. So
Sure.
we're like, yeah. So we came up with this thing, and she said, I'd like to have it be real people and keep it real and just create this network of people to help them create wealth. And so we're like, why don't we call it Real Wealth Network? And we thought it was going to be maybe 100, 200 investors. Little did we know that, today in 2020, that we have over 50,000 investors.
Sure, sure.
And we've helped a lot of people get into everything from single family properties to larger group investments and syndication deals.
Awesome. Awesome. That's such an inspiring story. I mean, it is definitely a story of hardship and, all the desperation, as you pointed out, Rich, that I think, detecting melanoma and, when's the, what the next paycheck and how the family is going to survive. It's got to be a pretty shocking experience for sure.
It was great. It was a crazy time. Yeah.
Awesome. Nice to also hear that it was a false positive, and obviously you are ways off, and all great things have happened. So thank you for sharing that. So Rich, moving on, give us some sort of background on sort of all the different activities within your group, and maybe we can kind of delve into some pieces of interesting areas within that, perhaps. Like, what are different divisions within your Real Wealth Network? Like, how does it operate and everything?
Yeah, so there's kind of like 2 major areas of real wealth, or 3 almost. It's like we've got this area of the network where we provide just a ton of free education.
Sure.
So for since 2003, that little radio show that Kathy had, she would come home with a CD. Remember those? And it would have her show on the CD. And then this is back in the day. This is 2005. I got this email from Apple saying, we're launching this new thing called podcasts. So I took that CD, I turned it into an MP3 file, I uploaded it to iTunes, and created one of the first real estate investing podcasts on iTunes. That took Real Wealth Network and just had us, it just went from this small little group, and all of a sudden we got this global reach. And it was just huge for the awareness. And so back then, our main focus was helping people get into single family properties in solid markets around the country. And basically the way it's monetized is I'm a real estate broker. Sure. So it's basically a broker to broker referral fee. And so when we help someone get into that, we get from the property team that has the property, we get a referral fee.
Sure.
That's one side of it. And then the other side of it is syndications. And so on that side of things, that's where we just basically we work with developers. Our main focus is residential development. So we'll partner up with a developer. That developer will come to us and often say, like, I've found this amazing property, amazing piece of land. I'm getting it entitled, or I've already got it entitled. We're the capital partner. We raise the funds. We help advise on what type of properties and build it out. So those are the main areas of the business.
Awesome. Now, speaking of that, how was your exposure to all the social media? Was that something through iTunes, Rich, or was that something that you established the podcast and it suddenly kind of grew, exponentially, and it helped you gain more members? What were like some of those early days like?
Early days, well, yeah, I remember when we hit 200 members and we were so excited, and then we broke the 1,000 barrier and all that. But I'm an early adapter when it comes to technology, so I'm always looking at what technology can we bring into the company to get better and better serve our members. So yeah, we jumped on that right away. We getting the website up, creating a membership-based website. Membership is free, so people can join. But we created a community. So by having people come in and join the network, we can find out more about them and how we can better serve them, and then speak to them that way. So yeah, using, as far as marketing side of things and social media, everything from using Facebook to Instagram to Pinterest and all that,
Mm-hmm.
getting content out there.
Sure.
But more than anything, it's, a lot of people come to our website because of the education we provide.
Sure.
Like I said, we've produced a free webinar every week, sometimes several. During this whole COVID thing, we're doing a webinar every single day to deal with the situation.
Sure.
So yeah, I think we've produced almost 1,000 free webinars now.
Wow.
So that's a huge attraction. People come in to get educated, and of the people we educate, probably only maybe 5% of them actually take action and invest. And
I
it's
see.
really interesting to watch that.
Sure. No, and that's great statistics to hear. I mean, but I think as you definitely can relate, Rich, I think all you can do is definitely provide education and kind of guide someone. It's obviously up to your recipient to perhaps take the action and kind of go through the next steps and things like that. So selection of markets for your, let's say, single family houses and things like that, Rich, what does that process look like? What things you are looking for? I mean, you mentioned earlier, Rich, that you right out of the gate, way early on, you had bought like 5-6 houses north of Dallas at the time. Was there some intelligence built around at the time that you wanted, and you kind of said that, hey, these are some of the metrics that we are following, and that's why we are going in certain market? Were you kind of that savvy early on, or was that something that developed over time? Give us some idea of how that transpires.
Yes and yes. So it developed over time. In the beginning, I guess the intelligence part was listening to experts. So Kathy's show, as it grew larger and had a larger following, she started to attract some really high-powered guests. So she had, and this is back in 2005, 2006, she had Kiyosaki on the show. And
Incredible.
He was talking about, how important it is to, get out of California.
Sure.
And even before that, actually, I think that was probably 2004 that she had Kiyosaki. He said, get out of California. He was saying Texas is a great area, and given all the reasons as far as employment and job growth and population growth and people moving, exiting California and going to Texas. So, so we just kind of followed his advice, and that's why we went to Texas, and that's why we were steering people toward Texas as well, mostly based on his advice. And then over the years, we just started to learn about, what are the drivers and what makes a good market, what makes a crappy market. And then just started to investigate that. And then we built a team around it. So then we brought in experts who had expertise in finding markets, people who understand the economics of it, people who understand single family properties. We hired someone who worked for a turnkey operator for years and brought him in, not as a turnkey operator, but to actually vet turnkey operators to look at what are their business practices, doing background checks, looking at their quality of their rehabs. So really, I think the most intelligent thing that we did was bringing in experts onto our team more than trying to figure it out ourselves.
Right. No, and that's the way to go. Obviously teaming up with experts and kind of, going to that next level definitely helps. So obviously now, Rich, you are into many different markets. What are some of the signs you look for in various markets? Is it something that, hey, there is a great job growth, some population growth, or are you looking for some opportunistic places where, you can always make an argument that, hey, something is not on the radar of national news currently, but perhaps there is some industrial development going on that can spur, a lot of additional auxiliary development around it. Is it some of those factors as well? Could you maybe describe that process? What exactly goes into your selection of markets?
Absolutely, 100%. So right now we're in 16 different markets around the country. A lot of them in the Sun Belt. More before it was a little bit more in the Rust Belt. Now it's more in the Sun Belt. So in these 16 different markets, what drives that is exactly what you're talking about. Yeah, obviously we're looking for population growth. We're looking for job growth. We're looking for a diversified economy. So not just one big, and this is learned from mistakes. Kathy and I invested up in Meridian, Idaho, near Boise, Idaho. And when 2008 hit, we just got crushed because it was only one major employer up there that was driving everything. So now we look for obviously a diversified job market, and exactly what you're saying, we look for the path of progress. What's going to be happening here? We learned that in north of Texas, where it was just luck. We bought these properties just not really knowing. We didn't know that they were putting in a major freeway connecting Dallas out to these suburbs.
Sure.
And so it was under development. And when they finished that, it was a game changer, because all of a sudden, all the people from the city now could move out there and have a faster commute. So
awesome.
Yeah, things that looking at what's happening, talking to local property managers, I think is super valuable. Getting in and saying, what's going on in your market? What do you see? What's changing? What's coming? I think you can get a lot of valuable information from local property managers.
Couldn't agree more. I mean, these are the folks who have sort of ear to the ground, as we say. I mean, they know what's coming, what developments are happening, which sort of headquarters are coming in and things like that. Are there any other things, Rich, in this, like perhaps, like for example, when we talk about selection of market, right? How long does it take for you to listen to various people, gather the data and things like that? Is it more like a 6-month process, year process before you say that, hey, you know what, we're gonna stake our ground here and kind of consider this as next market? How much data and intelligence you collect before you kind of make your move in that market?
Well, the cool thing is it's gotten faster and faster. So it used to take us about 6 months to do a full vetting, to really check out the area, to actually, we fly out there, talk to property managers, look at properties, meet property teams. But we've gotten that down to about 3 months now.
Awesome.
Tim, who's our director of property teams and oversees our SFR brokerage, he's the one who has the expertise in turnkey and who came from that turnkey world.
Sure.
And so now he's a Six Sigma black belt, which is pretty awesome as far as process control and all that.
Sure.
So he applies those lessons, and he keeps honing it and honing it and honing it. So now we don't go out searching. We don't have to go out searching now. Basically, we have so many companies coming to our website because they know about Real Wealth.
Sure.
They'll come and say, hey, I'd love to be a property team. And so that goes to Tim. He does an initial, phase 1, looks at them, looks at the market, looks at what are the drivers of the economy. And you might just say, no, sorry, you guys you're not coming close to the 1% rule here for rents or, for cash flow. Or he'll do a background check on the operator and say, no, I found this stuff and, your reviews are not good or whatever it is. But when people or a market makes it past phase 1, and then if the property team makes it past phase 2, then he'll fly out, and then he'll check out, he'll walk their properties, he'll look at what they're acquiring before it's getting fixed up, during and after. But also what we're doing a lot now, we've moved into 60% of our investors are buying new builds. So now we're working directly with builders, and our investors are purchasing these new builds. They put the deposit down, the property gets built, the tenant gets put in place, and with property management. So
right. And I agree with you. I think there's a large trend for built to rent type, investor grade properties for sure. I mean, on our podcast, we have interviewed several experts who kind of specialize in that niche as well. So it is definitely a growing trend for sure. Now, speaking of, sort of the asset or the houses piece of this, Rich, like, is it something like a mix of existing properties that perhaps some other operators are purchasing them, renovating them, and coming to Real Network saying that, hey, these may be great candidates for your portfolio to acquire, and perhaps you can showcase to your investors? What does that sort of, the investor initiation process look like? Or maybe perhaps someone who has a portfolio who wants to, kind of come to your network. What does that process look like?
Usually they'll come to they'll come in, they'll join the network. So we'll find out more about them. They'll, fill out a short questionnaire so we can get to know them. We have investment counselors. We have 4 investment counselors at Real Wealth who They all own investment properties. They've been in the game for 5 or more years,
Sure.
so they really understand it. They've been to all of the different markets, the 16 different markets. So that investor, most of our investors are newer. They own maybe one investment property, none. They own their primary residence. Some people even come in as renters, but they know that they live in California. Doesn't make sense to invest here. They want to get a cash flowing property, so they'll go that way. And then we have people who've come to us with, they'll have a portfolio of 50 or 100 properties, and they just want to simplify the process. They don't want to go out and they want it more passive, basically. So that process is finding out more about them, what they want. They'll do we call it a strategy session with one of our investment counselors, where they'll sit down and they'll have a 30 to 45-minute conversation, just looking at where are they, where do they want to go, what's their level of expertise, what are they looking for, what kind of returns, are they looking for more cash flow, are they looking for more appreciation, or a combination of the both. And then the investment counselor will say, okay, well, based on what you're looking for, this market would be a good fit for you, and this market would be a good fit for you. Then they make the connection with the property teams in those markets that are separate companies. And then a lot of times people will buy property sight unseen. People will jump on a plane and fly out and do a property tour and check out.
I see. And another related question in that, Rich, would be is that let's assume that the property is purchased, right? Are these typically rented properties initially, or are these investors purchasing the properties and then perhaps leasing them? And how is the property management piece of it is also handled in this?
That's a really good point. So we have two different type of properties that we offer investors, and we're really clear. And this is something that we got clear over the years when we were running into challenges where an investor would say, hey, it's really interesting. I go out to this market and this property team, their rehabs aren't that great and they're okay, but they're, whatever, and their properties are in C neighborhoods. But then I go over to this property team and they're all like A class and they put granite countertops in and all this stuff. And so we had a mastermind, basically, not one of these big expensive masterminds. We didn't charge a penny for it. We flew all our property teams in, got everyone. We had about 35, 40 people in the room. And we talked about, we need to come up with some standards for what is a true, what we called a real income property. And we just used real as an acronym. It was, rehabbed to like new condition and certain parameters around that. It was examined. So we would have, appraisers and all that. It's appraised at or above market value, and had licensed property management in place. So we get very clear standards it's basically about 40 different things on the checklist of that. So that way we can say to an investor, when you buy a property through us, when it's a real income property, it's got all these standards. And one of those standards is that there's licensed property management in place. And the cool thing about being a network and doing these referrals, that we hear back from our investors. We follow up with them after they've made a purchase, even 6 months and a year after they made a purchase, and say, how's it going? How's your property performing? How's property management going? And if we get feedback that something's not that great, Tim will take that, make a note of it, and we call it our resolution process. So he'll follow up and say, hey, property team over here, we've had 3 complaints about your property management team. And they'll say, oh, okay, they don't want to be kicked out of our network. So they go and fix that problem. So it's really cool. It's almost like we're kind of like a Yelp for investors, and they can look at that and they know that if they're working with one of our property teams, that the feedback that we've gotten from other investors has been positive.
Right. And I totally kind of relate to that sentiment, Rich. And another, I guess the sticky question in all of this would be is that, a lot of times the newbie investors who are investing, they probably don't have, the correct expectations aligned. I mean, there could be real cases where perhaps you could be doing everything right, but perhaps, someone is so new that they don't understand understand, what a vacancy is looks like, or perhaps what a turnover expenses looks like, and things like that. What are some of the challenges you kind of see? Because I'm sure, I mean, as an experienced person as I am for so many years and done property management myself, I can kind of almost see sometimes that, yes, sometimes a newbie person can totally not understand, although they may have signed on the dotted line.
Right.
How do you kind of address some of those challenges that perhaps may be coming up?
Great question. Great question. It's something that we've worked on for years, and we're still learning, and we're getting better and better at it. But it really comes down to educating the investor,
Sure.
especially if they're new. So yeah, even some of our property teams are like, hey, you're sending these investors over to us, and they come in, they're clueless, or they're asking these stupid questions, or what they see as stupid questions.
Sure.
And so we put together a process several years ago about what are those key things? One, we ask from our property teams, what are those challenges, and when people get to you, what are those questions they're asking you that you don't think they should be asking, or where do they seem clueless? And so we continue to improve our educational system around that. So it's like, there's a whole thing, there's a checklist even for the investors. It's like, before you connect with one of our property teams, you have to understand this, and it's all these, this is what we expect of you to know. And so we have a whole bunch of training videos, webinars that our members can attend. So by the time a newbie investor gets to look at one of these properties, they're not a newbie investor. They're educated, they know how it works, they know what challenges they can expect or might run into. So yeah, I mean, so that's our process, is really continuing to hone that and educate people so they're not a newbie on their first investment.
No, I totally, I mean, I want to definitely applaud you for, there's just so much work that goes into it, kind of creating all this, assets and, educating. I mean, you're basically kind of educating several ends of it. So, I mean, definitely, it's a lot of hard work. Now, talking about the other side of the house, Rich, about passive investors reaching out to you, and your company kind of partnering with developers and doing other syndications and things like that. How does that process looks like? Is it like a 506B syndication, which perhaps is a closed non-advertised type of what does that syndication nature look like?
Yeah, we've done, mostly we do 506B. We've done some 506C, just so we can, advertise and promote it. But we lean toward 506B. And the cool thing about being a network is people come into the network for the education to learn more. We can create a relationship with them, and over time really get to know them and know where they are financially, and really understand and vet them and make sure that they are accredited investors. And then when it's time, when one of these development projects comes along, and one of our syndications comes along, then we can just reach out to them, and people are always chomping at the bit, waiting for something. And we say, hey, guess what? Next week, we're going to be making an announcement. We're going to have a developer on this webinar and roll it out. And we'll have a couple hundred people on that webinar interested in the investment. So, and they get to ask the developers questions, see the project. That's how that works.
Awesome. Can you maybe share, Rich, some of the success stories around, sort of the development side of the house, that you kind of went from land to entitlements to kind of doing all the infrastructure and then build up of houses? How much is that time frame, and what sort of an average cost of these houses? And of course, I understand that it is market dependent, but if you can share some success stories, I'd appreciate it.
Sure. I mean, like the one that really like got us into it, when we didn't really know that much about it, is we were doing the single family home thing, and we had a developer come to us. I think it was probably 2009. And he came to us and he said, hey, there's this project up in Portland. This developer was developing these townhomes right in an amazing place right on the water there. He got to about 80% complete, and all of a sudden Lehman Brothers collapsed. His financing dried up. He couldn't finish the project. And so we were able to come in. This developer said he owes $8 million on this construction loan.
Mm-hmm.
We can acquire this construction loan for $3 million.
Wow.
And so we put it out to our investors and said, this is when we didn't know what we were doing. We just sent an email out saying, hey, everyone, we're doing this. And we raised the money really fast, like within a week. So we raised the money for that and turned that project around. This developer was able to come in, finish the rehabs, get it all done, these brand new townhomes, and turn around and sell them. And investors got, I think it was a 22% return on their money for that one. So that was a great one. And then, and then current ones, we have a project up in Reno where the developer found 80 acres right next to Reno, very close to the Tesla Gigafactory, and Amazon is up there, and all these, great economic drivers.
Sure.
And so he found this property and got it entitled, and we're building, I can't remember I think it's 80 single, there's 2 different developments. So what we were going to do originally was entitle this, build some of the properties, and then sell half of the lots to a larger commercial builder.
Sure.
And we had offers come in to buy it for the same amount that we had invested into it. That was about a $12 million raise. And so they were going to come in and they were going to acquire it for about 12 million. And so that would have left us at, all the investors get their money back, and then we could just, develop the other half into properties and make all profit after that.
Sure.
But Reno is doing so well and taking off so well that this developer is like, you know what? I think we should just keep them ourselves. I think we should be the builder in it. So that's what we did. We didn't sell to the builder, kept it, and now developing those houses up there. And it's about 50% done as far as completion on the properties, and so they're already selling.
Awesome. Now, speaking of, sort of the benefits to the passive investors and things like that, Rich, right? Is it purely a sort of a math and a financial return, or is it something more than perhaps you are kind of, multiplying, or loosely I'm saying this is that you kind of exchange their money like a 1031, that you go from one deal to other. How does all of that work? Is it mostly project based, or is it something you kind of keep on multiplying through various projects? What does that inner workings look like?
So you're saying, as far as the investors' funds, do they?
Sure.
Do they go from like turn around and put it right back into the next syndication?
Right. So was that typically how that occurs, or is it all return of capital, and then every project is pretty much independent?
Yes. Every project is independent. Exactly. Yeah, we have a preferred return and a profit share after the project's completed. But yeah, most of our investors, I would say, when an investor gets into one of our syndication deals, when they get their return of capital, then they put that into another syndication. So I would say it's probably about, I'm just kind of just guessing from what I've seen, but it's like around 60% of the investors in one of our syndications have come from one of our syndications before.
Sure. Repeat customers, right?
Repeat customers, but we're signing up about 400 or 500 new members a month.
Wow.
At Real Wealth. Yeah. So this is, and 60% of those, and 64% of those people are accredited investors, which kind of blows my mind. So
incredible.
Our marketing is targeted, I guess, the right way.
No, that's awesome. That's such a cool success story right there. I mean, incredible. Now, Rich, obviously you have such a great background into sports. You are, record holder, bungee jumpers, rock climber and things like that. I'm, sort of pumped always to kind of equate the regime, the practice, sort of the routines that go into all of it to come to a professional success. And a lot of professional athletes then come around and go into like various businesses, whether it's professional, like let's say real estate or any other business ventures. They awesomely become successful as well. So I'm curious to know, kind of your thoughts from how you kind of adapt the best practices and the routines that you kind of the mindset as well from professional sports, and now transferring that directly into something systems related business like real estate and kind of the real wealth network that you have done. I would be interested to know your thoughts around it.
Okay, yeah, that's a great question, actually. Yeah, I mean, those sports, the sports that I do, 100% is because they're fun. It's an addiction as far as I love the thrill. But that fun comes from not just like woohoo, there's that part of it and the adrenaline rush and all that. But there's also something really fun about, like you're saying, that the training, the consistently getting better. It's one of our core values at Real Wealth is mastery. Everyone on our team is committed to continuously getting better. I just really believe that as we get better, everything around us gets better.
Sure.
So there's this thing about mastery in adventure sports and extreme sports about, like surfing, or skiing. It's like honing it, getting a little better. And so I think some of the big lessons are, number one is discipline. There's this focused discipline about what's the outcome, what's it look like, how can I improve, how can I tweak the system to be a little better, and I think one of the biggest carryovers for me is fear management, because in investing, as we know, there can be fear,
Absolutely.
both in, the thinking about the outcome and all that. So there's something in adventure sports where the fear management has to be there. And I actually look at fear as my friend, because our fears we're born with us. They've been with us since we were little kids, and they've been there to protect us, to keep us safe. And so there's something in there about listening to the fear. So if I'm going to do a bungee jump, I'm going to listen to that fear. It's like, whoa, what's going on here? My fear is going to say, I need to know that you're not going to die. I need you to check the system. I need you to double check the system, make sure you're hooked in correctly, make sure that you're hooked to the cords, that the cords are hooked to the bridge, And so it's the same thing. It's like that fear that comes up with investing or building a business. The same thing applies, where you're like, okay, fear, what do you need right now? What are the potential obstacles? What do we need to look out for? And so using that same mindset. And then the third one, I would say the benefit is focus, about being present, being in the moment. Say it's skydiving, Kathy and I skydive together, and it's like you're forced to be in the moment in a great way. So it's almost like a meditation. It sounds kind of weird, but it's almost like a meditation.
Sure.
You're so present moment. And so I think that's also a carryover, that it works that part of the brain that develops the focus muscle. And then that carries over to investing or building the business or working with someone. It's how to be present in that moment. So I think all those things it really helps.
I love that. I mean, this is absolutely my favorite part that you said, Rich. I'm always passionate about knowing what takes and how people transfer their, sort of all the prior experiences, and especially the professional sports. And you hit nail on the head right there. Is pretty much that coming from discipline, the fear management part that you spoke about is absolutely key. And I can relate that when I was a new investor, I was passionate about going to houses and checking windows and all the details that perhaps come into a house. And then there was a fast forward after 5-7 years. All I needed to know was the address, and I would have probably just bought those houses sight unseen, because that was the confidence. I was so fear-free. I knew that, yes, if I buy something, I pretty much can renovate anything possibly. And speaking of that fear management, I absolutely love what you said also about that focus as well. So it's been great, Rich. Thank you for coming on. Kindly share with our listeners, how they can learn more about you, your network, and, different services that you have still going on.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, the best way is just to go to our website. It's realwealth.com. Pretty simple, Real Wealth.
Sure.
And then obviously Kathy's podcast has been around for a long time. It's the Real Wealth Show. Sure. And she also does a podcast that she's done for the last few years. That's a daily podcast called Real Estate News for Investors. So I think those are some great resources. And and all free.
Awesome. I greatly appreciate and I thank you for spending time with me and my viewers. So it's been a blast. I hope to, perhaps have Kathy also at some future episode as well. So I appreciate your time today. Thank you, Rich, for coming on.
Right. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Premium Cashflow Real Estate Investing Podcast. Please join us at premiumcashflow.com to sign up for weekly updates, research articles, and more. We will see you again for another great interview with an expert guest.